If you're watching this, it's because something inside you knows there's more beyond what meets the eye. And you're right. In the next 60 minutes, I'm going to reveal the real reason the demons begged to enter the pigs, and why this choice reveals a secret about the spiritual world that can change everything you believe about spiritual protection and invisible warfare. Look, if you've made it this far, it's because you're different from most people. You're not satisfied with superficial answers, and that's why I have a special request for you.
Hit like now. It's not because of the algorithm. It's because this revelation I'm about to share needs to reach more people who, like you, seek hidden truths. And subscribe to the channel by activating the bell, because in the coming days I'll reveal other biblical secrets that can transform your spiritual life in ways you never imagined. Because those who understand the spiritual patterns I'm going to show here will never again be caught off guard by the strategies of darkness. This is real protection. This is real power. Get ready. This isn't just a biblical story. It's a manual of spiritual warfare hidden in plain sight for millennia. The Sea of Galilee, 1st century AD. The waters are rough, but it's not the wind that strikes terror into the hearts of the local fishermen. It's him, the man who lives among the tombs, the one who breaks chains like dry twigs, the one who screams all night, cutting himself with sharp stones, terrifying anyone who dares pass through the region of Gadara. But on this day, on this specific day, something will happen that will change not only this man's life, but will reveal one of the greatest secrets about how the hierarchy of darkness works. Jesus is coming, and the demons know it. They know their time of terror is coming to an end. But what happens next will shock you, because it reveals a strategy that the forces of darkness still use today to destroy lives and turn people away from God. But here's the question no one asks. If the demons had so much power, if they had completely controlled that man for years, breaking iron chains like they were paper, why did they beg not to be sent to the abyss? Why did they specifically choose the pigs? And what does this seemingly random choice reveal about an ancient strategy that is still being used against you, against your family, against your financial life right now? The answer will shock you, and when you understand what really happened that day in Gadara, when you discover why 2,000 pigs had to die, you will never look at your financial problems the same way again. You will never again wonder why following God sometimes seems so costly. Because today, you will discover that there is a war going on all around you. A war where your wallet, your bank account, your job, and your material possessions are battlefields. And the demons of Gadara have left us the complete manual for how they operate. So buckle up, prepare your heart, and prepare your mind. Because in the next 60 minutes, you'll understand why Jesus allowed the slaughter of 2,000 pigs and how that permission changed the history of spiritual warfare forever. First, you need to understand where this happened. Gadara wasn't just any place. It was Gentile territory, territory where Jews were not supposed to tread. To grasp the magnitude of what was happening there, imagine the situation. Jesus, a Jew, crossing the sea specifically to go to a region where his own culture told him he shouldn't be. Gadara was part of the Decapolis, a confederation of 10 Greek cities in the territory we now know as Jordan and southern Syria. These cities were centers of Hellenistic culture, completely opposed to Jewish values. It was as if Jesus had left Jerusalem to go directly to the heart of enemy territory. But why exactly there? Why did Jesus insist on crossing the stormy sea, facing a storm that nearly killed his disciples, all to reach Gadara? The answer lies in what happened when they arrived there. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a planned confrontation. You see, in the Decapolis region, specifically in Gadara, there was something that shouldn't have existed according to Jewish law: pig farming. Thousands upon thousands of pigs being raised in a region of Jewish influence. This was a deliberate provocation. It was as if someone was purposefully challenging the values of God's people. And here's something most people don't realize. The massive presence of demons in that region was no accident. They were there protecting something. They were there guarding a territory that had been deliberately contaminated with practices that challenged God's holiness. The demoniac of Gadara wasn't just a disturbed person, he was a sentinel. A spiritual guardian strategically placed to prevent any force of God's kingdom from entering that territory. That's why he lived in the tombs, places of death, places where life shouldn't flourish. That's why he broke chains, to show that no human force could restrain him. But here's what will blow your mind. Jesus didn't go to Gadara by chance. He was sent, and the demons themselves sent him, unknowingly. Every time they caused terror in the region, every time the man cried out in the night, every time someone tried to pass by and fled in terror, they were creating a reputation. A reputation. And this reputation reached Jesus' ears. The demons thought they were protecting their territory by creating fear, but in reality, they were sending an invitation. They were shouting to the whole world, "There's something here that needs to be confronted." And Jesus answered the call. Now let's meet the man who became the residence of hell on earth. His name was Legion, and it wasn't just a nickname. When Jesus asks, "What is your name?" the answer comes in chorus, thousands of voices speaking through a single voice. Legion is my name, for we are many. To understand what this means, you need to know the Roman military context. A Roman legion consisted of approximately 6,000 soldiers, 6,000 trained, organized, and disciplined warriors. When the demons said, "We are many," and identified themselves as Legion, they were revealing that there were literally thousands of demonic entities residing within that man. But how is this possible? How can a human being host thousands of demons? The answer lies in the nature of demonic possession. Demons don't occupy physical space in the same way we understand it. They are spiritual entities that can coexist in the same spiritual space. Think of it this way. You can feel fear, anxiety, anger, and sadness at the same time, can't you? All of these emotions can coexist within you simultaneously. Likewise, spiritual entities can cohabit the same host, each with its own specific function, each with its own sphere of influence over a person's life. And here's what's truly frightening. They were organized. Legion wasn't just a number, it was a military structure. There was a hierarchy among them. There were commanders, there were rank-and-file soldiers, there were specialists in different types of torment. It was a complete army residing within a single man. But why did they reveal this? Why were the demons honest about how many there were? Because Jesus used an authority that forced them to speak. When Jesus asked, "What is your name?" it wasn't a casual question. It was a command with spiritual authority. It was as if a general were inquiring about the identity of captured enemy soldiers. They were forced to answer. And here's the crucial thing. Demons lie constantly, but when confronted with true spiritual authority, they cannot lie about their identity. They can deceive, they can manipulate, they can distort, but when pressed by the authority of Christ, the truth comes out. This reveals something profound about the nature of spiritual authority. There is a level of authority that forces even the principalities of darkness to reveal their true nature. And Jesus operated at this level. He wasn't asking for information, he was commanding revelation. But what happened next shatters every paradigm about spiritual power. And then something happens that shatters every paradigm about spiritual power. The demons begged. Entities that terrorized an entire region for years, that broke chains like paper, that completely dominated a human being, begin to beg. The biblical text is very specific about this. They begged greatly not to be sent to the abyss. The Greek word used here is parakaleo, which means to plead intensely, to implore desperately. Imagine the scene. Thousands of voices coming from a single mouth, all panicked, all pleading. But why this fear of the abyss? What does the abyss represent that causes so much terror even in powerful demons? The abyss, in biblical cosmology, is not the final hell. It is a place of temporary confinement, a spiritual prison where demons are prevented from acting on earth until the final judgment. For a demon, being sent to the abyss is like being placed in solitary confinement for an indefinite period. They completely lose their ability to influence, torment, or possess human beings. It is a living death for entities whose existence depends on causing suffering. But here's what's even more disturbing. They knew Jesus had the authority to do this. They didn't plead for mercy. They pleaded for an alternative. They acknowledged that Jesus had complete power over them.
but they hoped to negotiate the terms of their departure. And this reveals something fundamental about the spiritual hierarchy. There is a chain of authority in the spirit world that even the most powerful demons are obliged to respect. Jesus wasn't just another exorcist. He was the ultimate authority to which all other spiritual authorities must submit. But the question no one asks is this: if Jesus had the power to send them into the abyss, if he had complete authority over them, why did he allow them to enter the pigs? Why didn't he simply send them away? The answer lies in what happened after the pigs threw themselves into the sea. Jesus knew exactly what the demons were going to do. He knew they had a plan, and he allowed that plan to unfold because he knew that, in the end, it would serve a greater purpose. But to understand this purpose, you need to understand why the demons specifically chose pigs. We've reached the heart of the mystery. Why pigs specifically? Why not goats or sheep or any other animal in the region? The answer has 3 layers, and each reveals something profound about how spiritual forces operate. The first layer is ritual. Pigs were unclean animals for the Jews. According to Mosaic law, pigs were an abomination. They could not be touched, eaten, or raised by observant Jews. So, for the demons, entering pigs was like finding the perfect habitat, a place that was already spiritually contaminated by divine standards. But for the Gentiles of the region, pigs represented sustenance, wealth, and economic security. That herd of 2,000 pigs wasn't just livestock. It was the equivalent of years of work, an investment, a retirement, and the financial future of many families. The second layer is economic. 2,000 pigs represented an astronomical fortune by the standards of the time. Imagine waking up one day and discovering your retirement fund has vanished, your investments wiped out, years of work lost in a matter of minutes. That's exactly what happened to the pig farmers of Gadara. But here's the third layer, the one no one realizes. The demons chose the pigs because they knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew the pigs would throw themselves over the cliff. They knew they would cause massive economic destruction, and they wanted it. The demons preferred to destroy 2,000 animals and cause devastating economic damage, rather than simply leave the region peacefully. Why? Because they wanted to cause revolt against Jesus. Think of the diabolical strategy. Jesus frees a man, performs an extraordinary miracle, demonstrates supernatural power over the forces of darkness, but in the process causes immense economic damage to the local community. And then what happens? The people ask Jesus to leave, not because they didn't believe in the miracle. They saw Jesus' power with their own eyes. They saw the demon-possessed man clothed and in his right mind, but they also saw 2,000 dead pigs at the bottom of the sea. They saw their financial security destroyed, and they decided the miracle had cost too much. And here lies the demon's masterstroke. They managed to make Jesus seem responsible for the economic destruction. They managed to associate Jesus' presence with financial loss. They managed to plant in people's minds the idea that following Jesus is expensive, more expensive than it's worth. This was one of the most brilliant and perverse strategies ever documented in spiritual history. The demons turned their own defeat into a partial victory. They were cast out, but they managed to cast out Jesus too. And here's what will shock you. This same strategy is being used today. How many people do you know who have turned away from God after a financial loss? How many people have stopped tithing, stopped giving offerings, stopped attending church after losing money? How many people blame God when their finances go bad? The strategy of the demons of Gadara has become the standard: cause financial loss and make God seem responsible, making someone believe that following Jesus is too costly, making someone choose between God and money, between faith and financial security. Every time you face financial loss after a decision of faith, remember Gadara. Every time material problems arise after you draw closer to God, remember the pigs. There's an age-old strategy trying to make you blame God for what darkness has wrought. But Jesus allowed this for an even deeper reason. He knew that witnessing supernatural power would change that region forever, even if it cost 2,000 pigs. And he knew that at least one person would fully understand what had happened: the man who had been Legion. He saw it all. He experienced both oppression and liberation.
He understood the price paid for his freedom. And when the town asked Jesus to leave, this man asked to go with him. But Jesus said no. Jesus said, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." Jesus left a witness there, someone who knew the difference between the cost of a miracle and the value of deliverance. And the Bible ends this story by saying, "And he went away and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed." The man who had been a terrorist in the region became the region's first evangelist. Years later, when Jesus returned to Decapolis, crowds welcomed him. The region that had asked him to leave later became one of the most receptive places to the gospel. Why? Because there was a witness there who understood the true value of deliverance. Now you understand the full strategy. The demons were able to cause economic damage and make Jesus look responsible in the short term. But Jesus used even their strategy for a greater purpose in the long term. So, what does this mean for you today? Every time you face financial loss after a decision of faith, every time material problems arise after you draw closer to God, every time it seems that following Jesus is costing you dearly, remember the swine of Gadara. Remember that there's an age-old strategy trying to make you blame God for what darkness has caused. Remember that the demons preferred to destroy 2,000 animals and provoke a revolt against Jesus rather than simply accept defeat. The possessed man lost his chains, but the city lost its pigs. And in the end, the city asked Jesus to leave. Not because they didn't believe in the miracle, but because the miracle cost too much. The question remains, when it's your turn to choose between the miracle and material loss, between liberation and financial comfort, between Jesus and the pigs, what will you choose? Will you do like the city of Gadara, which asked Jesus to leave because of the cost? Or will you do like the freed man, who understood that no price is too high for spiritual freedom? Because understanding this difference can save not only your financial life, but your spiritual life. It can give you discernment to recognize when a financial loss is a spiritual attack, and when it is the consequence of mismanagement. It can give you wisdom not to blame God for what the enemy has caused. If this revelation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to understand the difference between the harm caused by obedience and the harm caused by disobedience. Knowing this difference can be the key that changes everything in your spiritual and financial life. And remember, the demons of Gadara left us the complete manual for how they operate. Now you know their strategy. Now you know how they think. Now you have the tools to recognize when you're being financially attacked to distance you from God. Use this revelation, protect yourself with this knowledge, and never again let them make you choose between Jesus and your financial security. Because that's a false choice created by the enemy. The real choice is between temporary security and eternal freedom. And as the man of Gadara discovered, there's no comparison between these two options. Spiritual freedom is worth any price, even if it costs 2,000 pigs.